This was well over a decade ago, but I wanted to share. I was born with a congenital heart disease and had surgery as a kid. I am completely okay, but sports was obviously not my thing. I was small, skinny, and clumsy because I never really could do the typical outdoor stuff like most kids. Got teased and bullied and all that. Typical for a geeky kid who doesn't excel with a football. In high school, we had a mildly problematic PE teacher, a typical sports dude who would make fun of the slower kids. I still remember how he ordered my overweight friend to do a gymnastics jump from a trampoline over a stool, which he obviously couldn't do, and he fell so hard he cracked his head. I found peace with myself long before and mostly didn't care and just took it. But it was stupid, and I hated how he always encouraged the jock culture of making fun of the nerds. We would constantly do basketball or soccer, football. The thing about my specific condition is I don't do explosive and reactive sports at all, so I would have to sit down every few minutes to catch my breath. You would think, what's wrong with that? But I was shamed about being the weakling of the class every week. I like sports, though, a lot. I was just always told by my parents and doctors to take it easy. And growing up, I noticed I had no problem whatsoever with endurance and steady, long-distance efforts. As long as I don't go into red, I could keep it up for quite a while. So it's not a surprise I fell in love with road cycling when I first saw the Tour de France on TV. I was super skinny, couldn't sprint, but I could climb a long mountain any day, pacing myself and blowing nearly anyone off my wheel on endurance. I got myself a road bike and never told anyone at school about my rides. Here comes the revenge. We had a class sports day, and there was a bus arranged to take us to the top of a mountain about an hour away, where we were to go on a hike. Our PE teacher said that if anyone wants, he will cycle up there and we could join him on the climb instead of the hike. I was the only one to volunteer. He was surprised and commented something to the effect of keeping up and not going to wait for you, but I insisted. He couldn't know I was more than capable to climb that mountain because he only saw me struggling with sports with him. He also couldn't know that was my home hill, literally starting a kilometer from my house. I did that climb 100 plus times and knew it blind, knew my pacing, and while I was no Tadej Pogacar, I knew I could probably drop my PE teacher at will there. For cyclists out there, the climb is 12.5 kilometers, 6.9% gradient, super regular. For non-cyclists, a perfect climb for a lightweight rider with good pacing and stamina. So the day arrives, and I did my warm-up, nutrition and everything as if it was a life or death mountaintop time trial, and rock up at the school in my full racing kit and my racing bike. I was 17, weighed 55 kilos, and totally prepared. He was a typical middle-aged, overconfident ex-soccer player, probably weighing 90 kilo, on a standard mountain bike. Super perfect situation. He sets a relatively hard pace on the 10-kilometer flat before the climb, and I don't speak or take the front. I take my good time to get back on his wheel after intersections, and he probably thinks he will drop me the second we start going uphill. Then the climb starts, and it becomes very apparent to me, but not to him, that he is near his limit, but that it's at least 5 km/h slower than what I could do on that mountain. But I don't attack him. That would not be satisfying. Instead, I start bantering how someone's getting dropped today, and it would be embarrassing if the whole class sees how I beat him. And then I take over the pace and slowly start turning the screw on him. I went only a little faster, then a bit more. I knew after about 3 kilometers he was in the red. So I ease off, keeping him just slightly over his limit for the next half an hour. I wanted to make him suffer, but without dropping him. I let him recover for a tiny bit if he starts looking too bad, but then I would slowly push the tempo up to make it as painful to him as possible. It was Tour de France level mind games. I don't think I've ever enjoyed myself on my bike more. We made it near the top together, and I let it rip on the last 300 meters or so, and it was that typical humiliation attack every amateur group ride cyclist knows. He dropped like a stone. I got my revenge and was very happy with myself. He said something about his heavy bike, and I kept my mouth shut, but it got better. On the top, he was clearly dead. So much so, he had to vomit in the parking lot, and even if only a few classmates saw it, everyone knew. He had to sit out the hike after, and I just quietly sat there with him, because I didn't need to do the hike like he promised, and just looked at him, enjoying the sweet revenge. I didn't say anything after that, nor did he. He never made any comments to me in PE class again. Lesson: don't bully your students. They might surprise you.
Just quick note, I did post this in ARE Traumatize Them Back, but I could not for the life of me figure out how to cross-post on mobile web, so this is copy-pasted. In 6th grade, I had this math teacher named Miss White who was pretty strict. Our school was honestly very diverse, but she was very, as her name suggests, white. I have a pretty difficult name to say, as it is Hawaiian. I am half Japanese, half white, but both sides lived in Hawaii for 3+ generations. My name is Cowie. It looks daunting, but it's just K-U-E. So honestly, not very difficult emo. Anyway, Ms. White stumbled on my name when she read attendance. So I did the usual. Oh, it's pronounced Chaw. You know what she did? She literally went, I'll call you Catherine. Let me tell you, I was flabbergasted. Like it was a private, very diverse school, and I had never had this happen. Teachers had horribly mispronounced my name, but this was definitely new. Also, no offense to any Catherines, but I love my name, and it has a lot of meaning to my family. And TBH, it sounds cooler than Catherine. Take no offense, please. I was so surprised that for the first 2 weeks, I kinda just let it happen. But at some point, it was just irking me because she made no effort to learn how to say my name. I never told her she could call me Catherine. And on top of that, she could have even asked me for a nickname or my middle name or something. So I started calling her by her first name, Jessica. She was the kind of teacher who no one called by her first name. Even the other teachers called her Ms. White. I had to look in the yearbook from the year before to find it, but from that day on, she was Jessica. And when that didn't make her mad enough, she was Jessie or Jess or JJ or any other nicknames I could think of. She never yelled at me or anything. She just corrected me and said, Ms. White, and then I would ignore it. For example, Jessa, that's Ms. White. Jessica, I don't get number 3. Can you explain? She never lost her temper, but was always annoyed LOL. She called me Catherine for the rest of the year, so not the most satisfying story. But I was happy with that revenge. Ms. White apparently got fired 2 years later for microaggressions towards students of color, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I just wanted to share this story because I figured y'all would enjoy it. Pasting this edit in BC of the amount of comments I am getting, LOL. Here you go. Hey, I'm getting a lot of confusion about the pronunciation of my name. Many comments are very kind and just saying how they originally thought it was pronounced like Maui. Others are telling me I pronounce my name wrong. IDK man, but I'll do my best to explain some basics for y'all. My name is Cowie. In Hawaiian, each vowel is pronounced, none are silent. However, native speakers tend to blend them together. For example, a plus U would make an RU sound. If you say that fast, it sounds like ow. So when a native speaker says my name, it may sound like Cowie, very similar to Maui. However, there is a difference because really, the O is still pronounced. A little more. In addition, one difference between Cowie and Maui is the okina, the little apostrophe thingy. In reality, it's a slightly different symbol, but I'm lazy. This basically counts as a consonant, and as a little pause. So basically the AU and I sounds do not merge together, because they are separated by the okina. Now, why can't you just say Cowie? Good question. You can. I'll still respond. But basically, you are saying my name as if it has no okina when it does. Not a big deal, but that's the difference. Hawaii. Also, there are some people saying, I'm wrong because Hawaii isn't pronounced Hawaii. True, it isn't. The traditional spelling is Hawaii, and pronunciation is Hawaii. Basically, the A and the H merge. The W and the A and the I merge. The W makes a V sound since it's surrounded by vowels. And then we have an okina and an I, hence Hawaii. Why it's spelled and pronounced differently normally is BC, it's the anglicized version. Almost same spelling, just no okina, and the W is seen as making the W sound, since that's how it is in English.
I decided to share how I got revenge on my bully back when I was in middle school. I used to be this very quiet girl that didn't have many friends. because I was basically an outsider to the town my family moved to. I did make two friends who are still my friends to this day. If it weren't for those two girls, I never would have survived middle or high school. Now let me explain to you how I got my revenge. Like I said, I have been bullied by this one girl who was pretty popular. She was constantly calling me names, spitting on me, pushing me, threatening me, stealing my stuff, and so much more. I never fought back. I just endured it. Teachers never got involved, which made the situation worse for me. It's not like they didn't know what was happening because this girl was bold and would even do it in front of the teachers. I was a quiet girl. I was only interested in my artwork more than trying to defend myself. This was a constant everyday thing with this girl, bullying me. One day, as we were getting off the school bus to go inside the school, I was feeling particularly bad after all the bullying and harassment I was dealing with on the bus. This girl kept kicking me and pulling my hair and calling me names. The bus driver did stop the bus a few times to tell her to get back to her seat and to leave me alone, but she'd only stop for a short while then get right back to it again. Once we were at the school, everyone started getting off the bus. I noticed a mud puddle not far from the sidewalk where we all were walking after getting off the bus. Something in me snapped. My bully was wearing all white this day. She had got off the bus before me, and that's when I saw my chance. I got off the bus, walked right up to her, and as she was starting to say something snide to me, I pushed her right in the mud puddle. I then walked away without saying one word to her or her friends. I went into the school and headed to my first period class. I had just sat down when I hear my name being called on the loudspeaker to head to the principal's office, so I apologized to my teacher and headed to the principal's office. When I got to the office, Miss Muddy Bully Girl was there, wiping her crocodile tears away, complaining about her outfit being new and all. I found it ironic since there have been a few times she destroyed my own clothing and laughed about it. The principal told me to have a seat, and I smiled at the girl, then sat down. "Did you push Liz, not her real name, in a puddle?" he asked me. "I sure did," I said proudly. He seemed shocked that I admitted to it. "See, I told you that scum pushed me," Liz yelled. "Quiet." The principal yelled at her, "I'll handle this," then looking back at me, he asked, "Why did you push her?" I simply smiled and said because I could. He didn't like that and told me he would be calling my parents. I looked at him and said, "Go ahead." My dad told me I have the right to stand up for myself, and that's what I did. I stood up to leave, and he stopped me saying, "Where do you think you're going?" I looked at him and said, "To class," and walked out of his office and headed back to my class. It wasn't long before I got called back to the principal's office, but this time my dad was there. I heard my dad yelling at the principal, telling him that if he suspends me, he'll make sure he loses his job. I stayed outside the office watching my dad yelling at the principal. The principal said, "Sir, your daughter pushed another student," my dad said, "and where were you when that student has pushed my daughter? Where were you when that student has called my daughter cruel names? Where were you when that student has destroyed my daughter's property? Now you want to be the all-powerful man to suspend a student who was bullied, who finally stood up for herself? I think not." I then decided to walk into the office. The principal looked at me, then back at my dad. I looked at my dad and said, "Hi, Dad. Sorry they bothered you." He just looked at me and said, "Don't be sorry. I'm proud of you." And I had the biggest smile on my face. The principal then said, "Sir, I'm gonna have to suspend her." And my dad said, "You suspend her. Then you had better expel the ones that have bullied her." The principal then said, "I can't do that." And my dad said, "I guess then my daughter isn't suspended now, is she?" I looked at the principal, expecting him to say something. Instead, he sat down on his chair, then looked at me and told me I could head back to class. Rumors spread at school that my dad beat up the principal, even though it wasn't true at all. The girl that bullied me, She never bothered me after that day because she feared my father and what he might do. Others came to me asking me what happened, and I told them. But they wanted the details about my dad beating up the principal, and when I told them that didn't happen, they didn't believe me. I made more friends later on in school, but I was still the quiet girl that loved to draw and paint. After that day, my principal kept trying to find excuses to get me kicked out of school. But this time I had my teachers backing me up and threatening to call the school board if he did. I was a B-average student and always did my schoolwork, which the teachers liked. I never missed an assignment. I think that's why my teachers finally backed me up. Some have even apologized for not helping me sooner when I was getting bullied. That girl that bullied me in middle school, she works at a gas station now, and I ran into her one day while putting gas in my car. She saw me, asked me if I was my full name, and I looked at her confused and said yes. Why? And she said, "You probably don't remember me, but I am Liz. I used to bully you. I'm sorry about the shit I put you through back then. My niece is going through the same exact thing I put you through, and I didn't realize how bad I was hurting you. I hope you can forgive me." And I told her it was the past and all was forgiven. Her and I actually became friends as adults. I have talked to her niece about what happened to me as a kid in hopes I can inspire her to stand up for herself or get help. Liz gave me permission to post this in case you all are wondering.
The story is long, so you can skip to the last paragraph if you want, for clarification. I'm 14F, and this happened when I was 13. I've always been pretty weird, according to the people at my school. This did stem from home. I don't live in that household anymore, but since my family didn't treat me very well, Mum's side, Dad is in jail, I would isolate myself a lot, to the point where I barely ever spoke at home. This made me very socially awkward and weird because I didn't quite know how to act around people, so I was an easy target for my peers. I was bullied severely in elementary school, and it carried on in middle school. I wouldn't really socialize with anyone, because I barely talked to my family, and in school, I had no friends. Eventually, I learned to not show emotion, because 1, at home, I wasn't able to really express emotions such as crying, because I would be punished, and 2, because if I were to cry in school, I would be made fun of more, obviously. But the lack of expressing my feeling kind of gave everyone another reason to be mean and pick on me more. At one point when I was in a French class, a group of girls which picked on me were sat right behind me. They were doing their usual, making fun of me and throwing stuff at me mainly. But we had a substitute teacher, which meant that no one was behaving like, at all. They put pieces of glue stick in my hair, and one of them slammed my head against the desk. The teacher didn't do anything, so I simply just told them to fuck off for once and for some odd reason. I got into trouble for cussing, but they didn't get in trouble at all. I told the teacher when he was telling me off that I wouldn't have done that if they would just leave me alone. All this wasn't a big scene in the class or anything, so the lesson carried on pretty easily after the little misunderstanding. Later in the class, I had a really bad headache, and the teacher asked me if I was okay, so I just told him. The girls heard it and gave me a pill of what they said was a painkiller. Paracetamol, Tylenol to be specific. I didn't take it because I didn't trust them. But the following day, I woke up with the same headache, so I was like, what's the worst that could happen? It was some sort of drug which fucked me up, so my mom took me to the ER because she didn't know what was going on. I was passed out most of the time, but when I was awake, I was unresponsive and could barely keep my eyes open. I got blood tested, but the doctors couldn't tell what the drug was specifically. I got a bag of fluid so it could be flushed out of my system. When I was getting my blood tested, everyone found out about my self-harm because I had to pull my sleeves up. All of it led to complications for a long time. Police, social care, and school got involved. But the school didn't punish the girls at all. They didn't even call the parents because I had a lack of evidence, even though I spent 7 hours in the ER. After that, they sent me death threats online, so I sent them to my school email and printed them out and brang them to the principal. But the school, yet again, didn't even call the parents because they can't punish them for it being online, even though they make assemblies about cyberbullying and the punishment that would be given by the school if it was to occur. Eventually, in a math class, One of the girls was making fun of me the whole class and embarrassing me in front of the whole class. I had enough at this point. I didn't do anything during the class, but I had my scissors prepared. The guy next to me, who I wasn't really friends with but was chill with, was telling me to calm down, telling me it will be okay, asking me what I was planning to do with those scissors and stuff like that because he could tell I was furious inside. When class ended, the bitch and her friends walked out of class like they didn't do shit. I ran after them, scissors in hand, even though the guy tried to stop me. I pulled one of the girl's hair back with my hand, the main bitch, and started to cut all her hair in one big chunk while shouting on the top of my lungs, "You fucking bitch, I want you dead." I continued to cut her hair, ignoring everyone around me, until I was physically pulled off her by a teacher. I will never forget the satisfaction of seeing her in a mix of shock and fear while crying, asking her friend if I actually just cut her hair. What made it more enjoyable is the fact that her little popular friend group didn't even stand up for her at all. They just all watched in shock. I was held by a teacher, so I couldn't do anything else, and got the scissors taken away by a security guard. I got a lot of punishment by the school and by police for aggravated assault, but I feel absolutely no remorse, guilt, or empathy because I was treated like shit for years and they had it coming. I get teased by classmates, but not bullied, because no one wants me to do anything to them. And I have a reputation all around the school. Not a good one, but at least I'm not getting bullied anymore. The girl I did it to is terrified of me, and surprisingly, she treats me very nicely, even asking how I am and how my day is going.